A moment from yesterday's edition of Fox News' The Five went mega viral, and so I want to play it for you, and then we'll discuss. But interestingly, as I was trying to find where the little snippet came from to get more context, I found a much more interesting part, even more important part of this conversation on The Five. And so I'll play that later, and that is kind of the subject that I want to focus in on. But let's start with the one that a bunch of people were talking about because it was hilarious, where Jeanine Pirro, after the panel is discussing the allegation against MAGA, that's correct, that MAGA is a cult, and that much of the people who follow Trump are in a sort of cult-like environment. And so Jeanine Pirro turns to the liberal Fox host, our favorite, Jessica Tarlov, and asks her, do you think we need to be deprogrammed? We as Trump supporters, referring to herself and the other conservative hosts on the show. And Jessica Tarlov goes, that's why I come to work every day, which is great to see. So again, I'll play this for you. Then we'll get to much more from The Five, where a very interesting moment happens as well. Before I play this, please make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. It makes a huge difference. We're growing at a pace that is genuinely incredible. So I thank you so much. And to any of you who haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Just a little click and a like button and the alert bell, drop a comment, all the good things to get that algorithmic mojo going. And here's the clip.
Ask you this. You know a lot of Trump supporters. Do we need to be deprogrammed? Be careful.
That's why I come to work every day.
So, of course, sort of a joke, but you know Jessica Tarlov means that. And her going into that job and having to debate for MAGA co-hosts constantly is an effort in deprogramming. Not that she's going to deprogram the hosts, because they're not really bought into that stuff that much, I think, but instead are playing a role and they get paid big bucks for it. And so it works to sort of play into the MAGA stuff. But I do think someone out there could be watching The Five and have their views challenged by seeing Jessica Tarlov bring the facts. But the part that I found much more interesting had to do with the economy, and Jessica Tarlov pointing to the fact that actually the story of Joe Biden's presidency is coming in during this economic crisis and then overseeing a recovery that stunned economists and stunned the rest of the world because we outpaced all the other economies' recovery. And so she then calls out specifically Gutfeld in this situation, but applies to all of her co-hosts for spending years. She doesn't add all this context, but this is the context of what she will confront Gutfeld about. They spent years blaming Joe Biden for every pandemic-related economic aftermath that he had to deal with, right? So all the things that were put into motion that he came into office, inherited, and had to figure out how to deal with, they pretended like those things were his fault. And it's really dishonest. But if they were consistent, then when Biden oversees this stunning recovery and things get a whole lot better economically, wouldn't they give him credit? If you're going to blame him for everything, wouldn't you give him credit for everything? And that's what they're not doing, obviously. And here was them being called out for just that by Jessica Tarlov.
No, there was really interesting data that came out about people's perspective on the national economy versus their state economies. And they looked at all of the swing states. And people thought the national economy was terrible. It was like at a -30. And individual economies in Wisconsin, in Georgia, Pennsylvania, Arizona, all the states that you need to win to become president.
So why is Trump ahead in those states?
Well, first of all, if you look at it, those polls were within the margin of error. I have talked to you about
all but one.
Margin of error. It is a jump ball. That's what's going on. If this was the worst economy in the world, which is what you would say about it, there is no way that we would be even close to this. It would be a runaway for the person on the top of the Republican ticket. And it's not, because people know wage growth is up. It's going past the rate of inflation. Unemployment, 3.8%, 26-month streak. We haven't seen that since the 1960s. You have to give some level of credit when credit is due. You have to.
And you have
I just zoned out, Jessica. I was looking at notes for the next segment.
And you have to give credit to the American people who assimilate this and make their own judgment.
Sure, and they voted for Joe Biden. They'll do it again.
Bombshell.
Okay, bye.
Click here to subscribe to the...
And you'll notice that was the end of the YouTube video that Fox News uploaded, ending in Jeanine Pirro being silenced. She's trying to move out of the segment, and Jessica Tarlov says Joe Biden won in 2020. He's going to win again, and Americans are going to vote for him. And that was her final response to the doubts from Jeanine Pirro, and Jeanine Pirro just went, as she was trying to process the truth bomb that had been dropped. And I'm as hopeful as Jessica seems to be there, because I do think, as I've been saying a bunch, and by the way, I have one more moment to play for you from this edition of The Five that has to do with, and this is going to take a while to discuss, so get ready, the whole Rock story, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson saying that he's not going to endorse someone like he did in 2020 when he endorsed Biden, and that whole saga. I want to talk about that in this segment and play their discussion of that, or part of it, on The Five. But first, on this, I do think so many elements about this next few months, the characteristics of this campaign season, will benefit Joe Biden. And if the starting point poll-wise is essentially they're tied, Joe Biden and Trump, which, yes, that's crazy. Okay, I get it. It's just what's happening. America, what are you doing? But, all right, let's say they're tied. And then you have from tied to November, that's the starting point. We're getting to November. And all the time in between, I think, benefits Biden. And we'll see the polls shift accordingly as people pay more attention, as Biden campaigns and doesn't just focus on governing as he's been doing, and as Trump is more in people's faces again, because we've been keeping up with him a lot. But your average voter who waits until closer to elections to get engaged in politics has sort of allowed him to drift off and be this abstract concept instead of the guy who you have to see and who's horrible, and his criminal trials. And again, the nature of the campaign that Biden and his surrogates are running is strong enough and is based on facts enough that I think a lot of people will be compelled. And as people actually feel the economic metrics we've been discussing, because it takes a second for that to be felt in people's lives, that I think will also motivate more people to vote for Biden, and many other things. So Jessica Tarlov's confidence there, that you want to talk about how the American people feel? Listen, I'm going to predict they're going to feel good enough to keep Biden in the White House in 2024. So let's do it, I think is something I align with. And that means we work really hard to actually make that happen. Now, the other part of yesterday's edition of Fox News The Five that a lot of people were discussing was the fact that actor and former wrestler and businessman Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson did an interview with Fox News and said that he endorsed Joe Biden in 2020. And essentially he felt like that was divisive, and so he's not going to do an endorsement in 2024. It was reported on as, as my voice sounds strange there, it was reported on as Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson saying he regrets voting for or supporting Joe Biden. That's not what he said, but I will address what he did say after playing this.
Am I happy with the state of America right now? Well, that answer is no. Do I believe we're going to get better? I believe in that. I'm an optimistic guy, and I believe we can get better. The endorsement that I made years ago with Biden was one I thought was the best decision for me at that time. And I thought back then, when we talk about, hey, I'm in this position where I have some influence, and it's my job then. I felt like that then. It's my job now to exercise my influence and share with this is who I'm going to endorse. Am I going to do that again this year? That answer is no.
Yeah, so that clip that went super viral, a bunch of people saying, oh, he regrets endorsing Biden. He just said he's not going to do it this year because he doesn't want to divide his audience, I guess. Now, listen, does that aggravate me? Yes. My whole life, is this, and is caring about this subject, and is focusing on politics, and is wrapped up in it, is everything. And so I try to calibrate my brain whenever I get ready to judge someone and be angry at someone, like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson here. I try to calibrate for the fact that he's probably not living in the same world where it's as existential and as important as we know it to be, right? And so if you're keeping up enough, you know that. And I would say set aside any damage that could be done to your business, set aside any PR problems you'd have, and endorse and do everything you can to get the guy elected who's going to not allow for the ending of democracy, right? But not everyone knows that's what we're talking about with this election, as we've talked about plenty. A lot of people just aren't yet informed on that, and hopefully we'll work to inform them before the election. It doesn't feel as existential as we talk about it to be. And so I think that's probably playing into this. And also from his perspective, he has a big conservative audience too. So his tequila and his energy drink company and movies coming out, different audiences. As a business decision, does he really want to alienate a portion of his audience? You understand why this would be the decision that he makes in this moment. And I guess in 2020, he felt differently. But I obviously disagree with the decision. And I think everyone who is patriotic and cares about our Constitution and democracy should go out there and make sure Trump loses. But not everyone sees it the same as me, unfortunately. Before wrapping up on this, here is the full context of the really viral Jessica Tarlov moment that was actually within the context of this conversation about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson not endorsing Biden this go round.
But let me ask you this. You know a lot of Trump supporters. Do we need to be deprogrammed? Be careful.
That's why I come to work every day. No, it is correct that conservatives are much more tolerant of liberals and spending time with them than liberals are of conservatives. That shows up especially in the dating data, that a liberal would never consider going out with a conservative. In the Trump era, obviously things have been different since 2016. So James Carville and Mary Matlin are not happening round two there. I think The Rock, yes, he's promoting stuff, but did get a lesson in you can alienate people when you put a perspective out there like that. He's a smart businessman. But we don't know how he's voting. He could very well vote for Joe Biden again. He's just not going to talk about it. And I thought that that was an interesting undercurrent, that Will didn't really push him on. He didn't say, well, what does that mean? He just let him say, my endorsement led to a lot of division. And that really tears me up because he is someone who is liked by people on the left and on the right. And that's a pretty rare thing.
Yeah, and then I'll add to this the headline from Mediaite. Fox News spent more time covering The Rock not endorsing Biden than Mike Pence not endorsing Trump. A part of me, I can feel a burning flame in my soul right now about this. And what I mean is, think about how deranged and how horrible your priorities have to be to put more emphasis on a famous actor not endorsing Biden. And to be clear, it's not that he's endorsing Trump. He's just not endorsing anyone. That's the story. That he's not doing something. Whoa. And they are focusing more on that than a vice president or a former vice president not endorsing the guy that he served under. And the reason is because he believes that his former boss asked him to violate the Constitution and prevent the peaceful transfer of power from taking place. That's one of the reasons why. And that vice president had his former boss sick a mob on him who chanted, hang Mike Pence, hang him. And that's one of the reasons he can't support his former boss. They focused less on that story than, again, a celebrity not choosing to endorse anyone this time. Flawed priorities, to say the least. Please make sure, as I said earlier, you're subscribed to the channel and drop a comment so I can know what you thought of this story.